December 1877. A man is leaning over this crude, tinfoil-wrapped brass cylinder in a dimly lit workshop. He's furiously cranking a handpiece, and he just starts shouting into it.
The year is 1877, and that man shouting in the dark, that's Thomas Edison. And what happens next on that freezing winter evening absolutely defies all the logic of the era.
He stops cranking, carefully resets the needle, and he actually hears his own voice played back to him. For the very first time in human history, he's reciting "Mary Had a Little Lamb." Now, the tinfoil tore almost instantly. The sound quality was, well, it was basically atrocious. But Edison himself, and look, this is a man definitely not known for his modesty. He was completely stunned by what he just pulled off.
That single, scratchy brass cylinder kicked off a century-long technological arms race. See, Edison's cylinders were an absolute nightmare to mass produce. But then in 1887, Emil Berliner patents what seems like a tiny design tweak, the flat disc. Flat discs could be stamped from a master mold in huge quantities. Boom. Just like that, recorded music goes from a fragile laboratory experiment to a massive global consumer product.
But here's a reality check that is probably going to catch you completely off guard. Those early 78 RPM records, they weren't made of plastic. No, they were stamped onto shellac, which is a brittle resin secreted by lac beetles in Southeast Asia, all mixed up with limestone and cotton fibers. Literally, the entire global music industry was running on insect secretions. It's wild. And during World War II, when Japan seized those exact beetle habitats, the supply chain totally collapsed. It wasn't until 1948 that Columbia Records swooped in and completely disrupted the market by inventing the long-playing record out of polyvinyl chloride, what we now call vinyl. It was lighter, had these incredibly narrow grooves, and hey, it was way less prone to shattering.
Moving to that slower 33 1/3 RPM speed didn't just change the physical material, though. It fundamentally changed how artists actually created music. The album as an art form was born, and suddenly that 12.25-inch cardboard sleeve became this massive, incredibly expensive canvas. The Beatles' Sgt. Pepper collage, that cost the equivalent of £60,000 in today's money. Think about Pink Floyd's iconic Prism or Andy Warhol designing covers for the Velvet Underground. The physical record completely blurred the line between a commercial product and high-end fine art.
But, tactile ritual eventually smashes right into sheer convenience, because you couldn't exactly go for a jog carrying a turntable, right? By 1983, portability wins the war. Sony's Walkman made listening deeply personal and super mobile, and cassette sales officially overtook vinyl for the very first time.
And then came the real assassin. In 1982, Sony and Philips teamed up and launched the compact disc. It was this sleek 12-centimeter polycarbonate disc read by a laser beam. No crackle, absolutely no surface noise, no degradation. The audio industry marketed this pristine new format with a slogan that feels, honestly, pretty dark in hindsight. They called it "Perfect Sound Forever."
The collapse of analog was brutal, and it was fast. By the mid-90s, the LP was commercially dead. Major labels entirely stopped pressing new vinyl releases. Those heavy, beautiful turntables that used to be the centerpiece of every living room, banished to thrift stores and dusty basements. By 1993, vinyl accounted for less than a single % of all music sales in America. Less than 1%. And honestly, that really should have been the end of the story. But against all odds, this totally improbable, slow-burn resurrection starts sparking around 2007. Independent record shops banded together to launch Record Store Day, drawing these massive crowds lining up before dawn. Evangelists, like Jack White for example, opened their own pressing plants. They simply refused to let the medium die, proving that a physical format everyone declared dead and buried could actually be thrilling again.
The sheer, jaw-dropping scale of this sudden spike completely defied all industry logic. I mean, look at this. US vinyl sales grew from just 2.8 million units in 2010 to an astonishing 27.5 million in 2020. It was fueled by young listeners who never even grew up with the format, and mega artists like Taylor Swift and Billie Eilish dropping these crazy, splattered deluxe wax editions. Sales rocketed all the way up to 43 million units globally by 2022.
And this brings us to an exquisite, undeniable irony. In the year 2020, a 19th century analog technology officially overtook its supposed digital murderer. Vinyl brought in $626 million in revenue, literally leaving the CD in the dust at $483 million.
But this miraculous revival,
It actually triggered a darkly comic supply chain crisis. The handful of surviving pressing plants completely buckled under the weight of this massive, multi-million-dollar demand. Suddenly, there's an extreme shortage of PVC pellets and lacquer masters. There was even a glaring lack of surviving technicians to fix the machines, mostly because they had all retired decades ago when the industry originally collapsed. Wait times to press just a single record stretched out to 6 excruciating months.
So it really begs the question, why? Why, in an age of instant, basically free digital access, does this massive, delicate, scratchable disc even matter? Well, first, you have the audiophile argument. An analog waveform physically captures the full, continuous, unbroken shape of a sound wave. Digital sampling, on the other hand, records audio at 44,100 discrete intervals every single second, basically chopping the sound up into tiny pieces and reconstructing it. Now sure, blind listening tests are hotly debated, but devotees swear up and down that a physical groove produces a warmer, fuller, and just more present sound than chopped-up digital data.
But here is a completely unexpected perspective shift for you. The physical inconvenience of vinyl, it's not a technological flaw at all, it's the whole point. Think about it. Digital streaming is algorithmic, it's passive background noise, but vinyl demands your forced attention. You actually have to pull it from the sleeve, carefully drop the needle, and commit to listening before physically getting up to flip it over. For a highly distracted, extremely digital generation, this friction, the exact thing technology spent decades trying to eliminate, is the precise kind of active engagement we are desperately craving.
In the eternal competition between digital convenience and tactile meaning, which one continues to spin?